And we're live. Duncan,
Oh,
welcome.
thanks, mate.
Thanks for
Nice
coming
to
on.
meet you. Yeah, no, it's great. Looking forward to it.
Beautiful. So this is our second member spotlight. Obviously, we had Louise on a few weeks ago, and I reached out to you last week and said, mate, would you mind coming on and sharing a little bit? So I really appreciate it. So let's dive in. I'm going to hit you from every angle, Dunk, and we're going to tap into your own experiences and wisdom over the next 20 minutes. So brace yourself now. You'll be fine.
Okay.
You'll be fine. So the one question I asked Louise, and I always forget what it is with you, but what the hell is it you do for a living?
For a living?
Yeah.
Well, I guess actually probably what I do is I'm a dreamer, and I'm trying to convert that into a life. At the moment, I'm actually doing I'm a medical pharmaceutical rep working in cardiology, which is so bizarre.
And far removed from this work.
Do you know, in actual fact, I think I used to think that it was so far removed from this work, but I think it's a perfect environment for me to engage in this work.
Yeah.
It was funny, probably about 5 years ago, I woke back up again out of probably 10 years of narcolepsy and, being asleep. And then I woke up and I've looked around and I've gone, who am I?
What do you mean by woken up?
I guess I started to have that, the life started to cascade, it just started to turn to shit,
Okay.
in a really poor relationship, working in an industry that I don't have a lot of faith in, a lot of belief in, being unhealthy in myself physically and going through severe depression, like real darkness. I had people around me that were just not nutritious people around me, sort of thing, and I just was getting more and more sort of encompassed in this black cloud that I called my life, and I went, oh, what do I do?
Enough's enough.
Yeah, enough's enough. And I think the depression was pretty bad, and wanting to not be here, and then making some choices around that environment, and then just sitting there just going, right, the only one's going to get me out of this is me. And
what was the first step you took, Dunk, from that point?
Re-engage in back into the belief and understanding that I had that there's something more than me out there. There's something greater than me out there. My background was going through, I think put it in context, probably at the age of 7, I had this, I reckon this was probably my ping moment. As Bruce Lipton says, after the age of 7, you start to become a little bit more conscious. And I think at the age of 7, I remember walking up the hill in Bellman Avenue Upway in the Dandenongs, that's where we used to live. And I had this moment where, how do we know this isn't a dream and one day we're going to wake up from this? And that was quite a profound thing. I still remember it. I know how I remember it. So I ran up to my dad and I said, Dad, how do we know this isn't a dream? We're going to wake up from it. My dad is, who's painted this picture behind me as well. He is the oracle, or was the oracle of knowledge, and still is in some respects. But he said, oh, I don't know. How do we know it's not, that it's not a dream? And I thought, wow. And I think I've always had a knowing that there is something more. And as you do, the only place that you sort of find is through the church environment a lot of the times.
Okay.
So I delved into that and started to look at spirituality through that. But I found with that it was too canonized. It wasn't coming from heart. It was coming from head. And so went through that for a little while and then started to move away from that. And I think I got into Greg Braden, the Divine Matrix, which I just went, oh, this is better. and started to look at that, for quite a few years.
So you were certainly searching then.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's almost like there's a point of pain, and it's almost like D-Day, isn't it? Where you go, I can continue, or I can
yeah. And
a new path with thyself.
Well, it was. I mean, it was at such an early age that I sort of looked at all this sort of stuff. It's through my teen years. I'm 48 now, 48 this year. But my teen years and then going into my early 20s, and I got married really young and had kids, fairly young, and then went back to school as a mature age student, blah blah blah. And then life just started to creep up on you, and then a few things happened with that first relationship, and then I ended up leaving that relationship and going, shortly thereafter going into a new relationship, and that's when I went back to sleep again. But it was funny, going through the Greg Braden stuff and seeing that there's something more. Carolyn Mace, I missed, was another one she does a lot of intuitive healing side of things, which is a bit out there, and reading a lot of her stuff. I started looking at Bob Proctor. I think at that time, you started seeing The Secret come out. That was my first sort of taste of Joe Dispenza. Seeing his mug pop up. What the bleep do we know? And all these sort of things. It was almost like you've been eating junk food, and all of a sudden you sit down to something that is so tasty and so healthy that you just start to feel that little spark starting to rise a little bit, and you think, I want more of that. But then I guess I needed to go through the dark night of the soul for a while, and which is what I went through for about 10 years, and then sort of came out and voila,
So you came to my workshop in January, wasn't it, in Sydney? You drove from Newcastle, it came down.
January last year. Yeah.
So my question for you is then, Dunc, you were clearly on path anyway and trying to, like we all do, just trying to make sense of it all and figure it all out, I think. But
yeah.
So what attracted you then to coming into the workshop and then being part of Let It In from what you've experienced in life so far?
For me, it was community. It was actually trying to find that there are other people that are actually thinking this way or are on this path of there's something greater out there. I think part of it was to have a bit of okay, I'm not a nutter. Thinking this way, there are other nutters out there that I can join, and maybe we might be the norm. But I think the other part was to see, that, where do I fit in this life equation and that side of things. But I guess going through the work has been quite profound, because I probably found a greater thing that I needed was that I need to move all this knowledge from head to heart. And I think that's been the most profound transformation. It's been, I had to be hit with the humility stick big time, for myself to actually start to see that I could have a really good coffee table conversation with anyone, but do I really believe this shit?
Yeah, beautiful, from head to heart. I love it. So it's almost like, and the big thing for me and what I really wanted to capture with the 4-week program with Let It In is so if somebody was a beginner coming in, or somebody that's coming in with this world of knowledge, which I knew you did, mate, when you come to the workshop, some of the questions you're asking, the stuff you're saying, it's like, holy shit, you're clearly on the journey. But it's like, how do we take that and actually do the work? How do we become embodied and improve our day? Because I found for myself as well over the years is that I was off looking ferociously, but it's like, how do I take that and actually make impact in the next 24 hours?
Oh, absolutely. I was meditating and really getting into meditation, but not really fully understanding what it was about. A lot of the Joe Dispenza meditations that he was doing, I actually downloaded, just on the internet. I was actually, what was his name? The guy, I can't think of his name, was an American guy, and I was using his meditations for a while, then hooked into Joe Dispenza sort of stuff. But I think what I loved was that I had to actually disassemble all this knowledge and actually have a structure to work with. And I think that's probably what I found with what I did find with what you did was create a really good sort of structure. I've heard people say that, developing it into or evolving into a higher level of consciousness, you can't have a degree of structure to get there. It's just, and I've gone, no, this is actually like if I was physically training my body, and I didn't have a structure with that, what would I do? But if I can actually have a structure to work with, then I can get to a level of fitness. Then that level of fitness, I don't need so much of a structure to maintain that level of fitness because I'm already there. I then start to look at how do I apply that fitness, and that's probably the stuff that I'm really enjoying now. But I needed that structure to bring it from here into here.
Yeah, so well said, mate.
Was it?
So what changes then have you now been making from doing the work? Like, what are you noticing in your day and how that's relating to the direction?
Yeah. I look. The big thing for me is the observer, being the observer in my life, and observing. I look at it. There's two of me going on at the moment. I've got the old personality me that rears its ugly head and plays its game, and then I've got the new me, which is the observer, which is actually the authentic me. That's who I really am. And just watching how this plays throughout the day, this inauthentic state, it sits there throughout the day, and being the observer in that, and then actually being able to go, no, you can just drop out now. And I think for me, what I've found is that throughout the day, I come to heart a lot, and if I can't do it through concentrating on are you coming from heart, I'll actually physically touch here and I'll tap, hey, come to here, sort of thing. And as I do that, I find that I can actually dissolve my patterns and the way I would react to a situation. Then I can actually start to begin to respond, which is quite interesting. That's been profound.
Do you find that easy, or do you find that a challenge, and do you think it's a skill?
It's a skill. It's a skill you have to train. Yeah, it's. Do I find it easy? Yeah, I do find it easy now. In the majority of times, it depends how far down it depends how engaged you become with this old state and the old patterns. So if you're having a bit of a meltdown, it's a little bit harder to bring yourself back out of that and let the real you sort of step forward into the equation. But you do it afterwards, and I think this is what's beautiful about this whole process is that you should never have guilt about, if you go down an avenue and you go, I'm a goose, you shouldn't feel guilty about it. You should look at it and go, right, how do I understand the mechanisms that brought me down that avenue again, so I can hack that system and actually step into my authentic self. And I think this is what the beauty is of being able to step, at the end of the day, having a gratitude practice, for example. I don't sit there and write in a journal and all that sort of stuff, but I'll just sit there and just go, how many times was I asleep throughout the day, as far as stepping into this unconscious state, and what could I have done differently, and how can I the next day just be aware of just one little thing I can change and tweak to rehack so I can step into my authentic self. And I think that
it's a self-analysis, right?
Yeah.
So it's a self-analysis and it's a skill, but it's a skill that you learn and it becomes easier over time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So the question to you is then, what would you say to the Dunc of 5 or 10 years ago, whatever it was, when you were in that thick of depression, before you said you became awake? What would you say to him?
What would I say to him? Well, the first thing I do is I put my hand on his heart, and just breathe. And I think this is what we see with the intention stuff that we've been, or that you've been doing, is that there's a lot of, you can just put a different energy into a situation. What would I say to him is that it would be, you're going to get there. Just trust the process. Sorry, mate, I've got things popping up on my screen.
That's okay.
You're going to get there, and don't sweat the small stuff. I don't know. I mean, it's hard. It's funny. Would I change my life and things in my life, and would I do things differently? Well, I don't know. If I did, would I be sitting here chatting with a pretty cool dude? I don't know. I don't think. I think you've got to sit there and just go. It's almost like life. I look at it this way. My background's in exercise science, and I had a fascination with primal patterns of movement. And if we look at children, you put your finger in their hand, they grasp onto it. They don't sit there and go, oh, I've got to, every time I see a finger, I've got to grasp. It's these primal reflexes that pushes them towards being able to move and engage in this environment and get into an upright position. And I think what life does is it actually provides us with those primal primal sort of reflexes, and they're a little bit uncomfortable, but it keeps pushing you towards, getting into a level where you actually truly mature. You actually become conscious and become a conscious being, which I think there are people who can live their whole life and not become conscious at all, which is really quite scary. But I think, does that make sense? I mean, that these primal reflexes, and I think that's what life does. The brick, the feather brick Mack truck analogy is a good analogy for that.
Yeah, of course. I think I read someone the other day, but I love it, and we talk about it all the time. But if without the process, if we didn't go through and earn it, then we wouldn't be able to give it meaning. And without the meaning, we then don't value it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So for me, I try and look at everything now as there's a process to this, and there's going to be meaning from this. And it might take me 5 years to look back upon what meaning am I having right now. But coming back to that and observing that presence, and like you say, it's almost being conscious when you're unconscious. You bring it back to that point. But that's where the magic is. And then you look back and go, wow.
Well, that's the act of surrender. I mean, this whole, we hear this term surrender. Oh, just surrender. But the act of surrender is to sit there and go, and I love what Louise was saying with the interview that you did with her. It was that trust side of things, and it comes down to trust. That, and I think Tony Robbins said it, that when we realise that life is happening for us and not to us, it's a game changer. And that to me is brilliant. When you realise that life is conspiring to give you to help you realise who you are in its entirety, which is just extraordinary when you start to get a glimpse and a feel for that. I think you end up starting to go, yeah, life's got my back, and I'm actually going to seek what life is, and I think that's that surrender moment. So Dawson Church, we were just chatting a little while ago, and you mentioned Dunc. You got to get Dawson Church's book. He's brilliant, and God, yeah, he's great. And I think what Dawson Church, some of the stuff that he's looking at with, when you look at people who surrender in those moments, and actually just trust. When he lost his keys and he just went, oh well, that is what it is. I'll surrender. Next minute, this kid dives down and comes up with his keys, in murky water, and it's just like, these are these surrender moments where the universe has got your back, but you've got to engage with it, and you've got to engage with it, not from your personality, which is your constructed self. You've got to engage with it from your authentic self, which is your grown self, and I think that's what this work does, is you actually grow. You're actually learning to be a gardener of yourself, whereas this is just a whole load of shit that's constructed. And we spend a whole lot. Yeah. Actually, there's another good book, and everyone's probably heard of it. The Subtle Art of Not Giving the Proverbial, and and I think that's a great book. In a lot of things, there's a lot of gold you can pan for in that. But I think one of the things is that we actually keep propping up. We have this complete disregard to death and all that sort of stuff, and what we do is we keep propping up our personality and making ourselves, feel alive by having this external personality and getting people to love me more and like me more and do things for me. And everything's external, and that's your fake self, And as Trevor Hendy, I think that great podcast you did with Trev, he said, it's when we start to know ourselves and then know ourselves as source and then know what to do with it, then that's when the gold starts to happen. So that's the gold. Rabbit hole.
Beautifully said. Like mate, we've just flown through 20 minutes, but before we wrap it up, I haven't got it on audio or camera yet. So the group intention from last week, can you just share what happened with your experience with Sean? Because Sean was receiving.
Yeah. So as I said, Carol Mace was somebody I probably all through my life have had a bit of an understanding of, connecting with people. And people's energies, especially when I used to massage people. I get this weird stuff where I'll be massaging them, I get this whole story going on. I'm thinking, all right, I'm just making this stuff up. And then when I started chatting with them, they said, how did you know that? And I said, well, your body's, we're all energy, just do your basic quantum physics sort of thing. So when I was with Sean, I'm sitting there and I've got this pain that's radiating from my shoulder blade through into my chest, like a spear, like a sharp pain. And it was, it was really quite sore. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, and then I said, what I always do, well, not I always do, but what I try and do now is I go, is this me or is this something else I'm picking up on? And I went, well, it's not me. Anyway, I thought I won't say anything. I'll just sort of sit there. And next minute, you go and throw it to me. Say, Dunc, what you hear? And I went, oh, what? I'm going to sound like a nutter, but I don't care. Because that's part of the thing. I don't care. I'm starting to deconstruct this whole persona of Duncan anyway and grow this new one. Anyway, I just went, that's what it was. And lo and behold, Sean pipes up and he goes, I've had a torn pec muscle, and I've had it, it's 4 weeks into it and it's going through the healing process thing. But it was like, as soon as he said that started to dissipate. And I went, okay. So I think we are, I was chatting to somebody the other day who's a good mate of mine, and he actually came to your workshop in Noosa, Chris. And I was chatting to Chris. I caught up with him a couple of weekends ago, and I said, Chris, mate, I said, it's really, you need to understand that we're just energy beings, mate. And if we can actually start to tune into the understanding that we're energy beings. I mean, you have to read Dispenza's stuff or Dawson Church, that you start to see that once we start to realise we're energy beings and we actually can have an influence on that, then all of a sudden, this is a game changer. We start changing people's lives. More so, we start changing our own life. And I think, what we saw with Sean is that, it was a sharp pain, But the other thing is that, the next thing is why was the pec muscle torn? What's the weakness there for? And that's the next level. Which Sean as sure as I'm peeling that banana. So.
Well, for me, the group intentions just truly highlight how we act, think, and feel, and the intent behind everything that we do in our daily lives has effect. Otherwise, we couldn't all sit on Zoom, connect energetically, and start to tune in like that, which people would have locked you up 10, 20 years ago if you were saying this is possible. But that's what quantum physics is now showing. And it's really important to know that. Now, Doug, I'm going to ask you one quick question just to wrap it up.
That's all right.
My man. We've had nearly 35 to 40 new members sign up over the last 2 weeks, and they'll be getting in there and watching this over time and that. What would be your words of wisdom or experience to the new guys just coming in that might be new to this work from what you've experienced this year?
Simple. I mean, if you wanted to get yourself physically fit and physically healthy, you go and choose a good movement pattern, functional movement. You'd be looking at really good food to eat. If you want to start to get healthy in your heart and your head, you've got to start to ingest nutritious conversation, nutritious food. So things like, reading quality books, podcasts. Start washing your mind. Switch off the TV, switch off the stimulus. Separate yourself away from people who actually aren't serving you. And when I say serving you, that they're trying to keep you in that old personality state, and start having nutritious conversation. And I think if we can have that nutritious component coming into our body, the body is in this nutrient deficiency hunger. We see that physically with people who are malnourished, but we also see it spiritually. I see it for myself. Spiritually, when I'm malnourished, I have this nutrient deficiency hunger. So as soon as I see something like a Dawson Church or a podcast, I just go, and consume. And the more you do that, the more you're going to strengthen your resolve and start to grow the new you.
Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. And I'll add one more thing to that. As you consume and submerge, which I 100% do myself, is then start acting out the instructions that are getting done.
Absolutely. Do your meditation. I meditate when I can, most of the time. When I say most of the time, more often than not, so probably 5-6 days a week, I'll meditate for an hour and a half. I love it. But there are times I meditate for 20 minutes, like the Petra's Energy Center meditation that you guys did. Wow, gold, serious gold. Give me that for an hour, guy. I'll be a happy man.
Duncan, thanks so much for coming on, mate. I really appreciate it. And lovely to get your personality up in front of everyone, because I know you're probably the best advocate for this work, full stop. I've never met anyone more enthusiastic about it, which is brilliant, and it rubs off continually. So thanks, my man. I appreciate
Very
it.
grateful. Thanks, mate. Cheers, bro.
Thank you.
Gotcha.